She could feel the tremor in her hands, the sting of hot tears blurring her vision, as his judgment settled in the air of the cozy bistro. Honestly, you're just too big for me. The words were a physical blow, but the sequence of events that unfolded next, when a man at the adjacent table pushed back his chair, would not only salvage her evening, but fundamentally reshape her entire existence. The stem of her wine glass felt fragile in her grip as Clara struggled to absorb what she had just been subjected to. Across the small table, Lance was already on his feet, carelessly dropping a $20 bill onto the polished wood as if settling a debt for defective merchandise. "That ought to cover your mineral water," he said, his voice sharp enough to slice through the soft melodies of the French singer crooning from the speakers. "Maybe put the change toward a personal trainer." The insult lingered, a foul odor in the air. The shade of red lipstick Clara had spent a quarter of an hour perfecting now felt like a clown's paint on her quivering mouth. She had arrived at Le Petit Bistro 40 minutes prior, her heart buoyed by a fragile sense of optimism. She had checked her appearance 3 times in the dark screen of her phone, fussed with the drape of her cobalt blue dress, and rehearsed a friendly, open smile. She had even arranged for a babysitter for her son Leo, a rare and precious act of self-care. I don't follow," Clara managed to stammer, her voice a faint whisper against the backdrop of clinking silverware from other patrons. "My pictures on the app were from last month. I wasn't trying to deceive anyone." Lance let out an exasperated sigh, glancing at his expensive watch as if her confusion was an imposition on his valuable time. "Listen, I own a high-end fitness studio. Image is everything. Being seen with someone like you, it's just not good for my brand. You're not the person I envisioned." He paused, his gaze sweeping over her dismissively. "You're just too... enough." The word came from the table beside them. It was a deep, resonant voice, laced with a quiet fury that made Lance halt his tirade. Marcus Thorne rose from his corner seat, his impressive 6'2" frame unfolding with a measured grace. His dark eyes were locked on Lance, radiating an intensity that caused the smaller man to take an instinctive step backward. "Excuse me, is this any of your concern?" Lance scoffed, attempting to regain his lost bravado. "It is now," Marcus stated calmly, stepping closer. His hands remained relaxed at his sides, but his posture, solid, protective, unwavering, drew the attention of nearby diners. "You've made your point. It's time for you to go." Lance gave a short, nervous laugh. "What are you, her knight in shining armor? Figures. People like you two probably stick together." Marcus ignored the jibe completely. He moved past Lance, smoothly pulled out the chair opposite Clara, and sat down. His gaze met hers, a warm, steady brown connecting with her tear-filled green eyes. In that moment, an unspoken message passed between them, a recognition of pain, an offer of solidarity. "May I?" he asked her softly, his attention solely on her, rendering Lance invisible. Clara, too stunned to form words, simply nodded as fresh tears traced paths through her makeup. Marcus turned his head slightly toward Lance, who stood awkwardly, his mouth agape. "She is a beautiful woman," Marcus said with quiet conviction. "You're just too superficial to recognize it. Now I suggest you leave before I have to forget the lesson my daughter taught me about using words instead of actions." The mention of a daughter seemed to throw Lance off balance. He glanced between the two of them, mumbled something about them being pathetic, and then stormed out of the bistro. The cloying scent of his cologne hung in the air like a bad memory. For a moment the bistro was hushed. Clara could feel the weight of stares, some sympathetic, others merely curious. A hot flush of humiliation crept up her neck. She wanted to bolt, to vanish into the Philadelphia night, but her limbs felt like lead. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to Marcus. "You really didn't need to do that." "Yes, I did," Marcus interrupted gently. He took a clean napkin from the dispenser and passed it to her. "Nobody deserves to be treated like that, especially not on a night that was supposed to be enjoyable." Clara dabbed at her eyes, inadvertently smudging her mascara into a darker mess. "I must look like a disaster." "You look like someone whose heart was just bruised by a person who wasn't worthy of sharing your company," Marcus corrected her. "I'm Marcus, by the way, Marcus Thorne." "Clara," she managed to reply. "Clara Evans." "Clara," he repeated, as if trying out the sound of her name. "Can I ask you something personal? When was the last time you had a proper meal? I mean, really enjoyed it, not just moved food around on your plate." The question was so unexpected it almost made her laugh. I ordered a soup, but—" "You were too nervous to eat it," he finished for her. "First date jitters. I remember what those were like." A shadow flickered in his expression, a fleeting memory she couldn't decipher. "How about we reset the evening? Let's pretend the last half hour never occurred. Hi, I'm Marcus, and I was just about to order the best cassoulet in the city. Would you care to join me? Absolutely no pressure, no agenda, just two people sharing a meal." Clara looked at this man, this stranger who had defended her and was now offering her genuine kindness instead of condescending pity. "Why?" she asked, her voice still shaky. "Why are you doing this for someone you've never met?" Marcus was silent for a moment, his fingers tapping a light rhythm on the tabletop. "Because I have an 8-year-old daughter at home named Lily," he said at last. "And just last week, she came home from school upset because another girl told her that the drawings she loves to make are weird. I hugged her and told her she was brilliant and creative, exactly as she is. But sitting here tonight, hearing what that man said to you, I realized it's not enough to just tell my daughter to be kind and to stand up for others. I have to be the example." Clara felt a new wave of tears welling up, but these were different. They weren't tears of humiliation, but of gratitude. "She sounds very lucky to have you as her father." "I'm the lucky one," Marcus said, and there was a depth in his voice, a history that made Clara want to understand more. "She saved me in more ways than she'll ever know." Before Clara could inquire further, an older man with a shock of white hair and kind eyes approached their table. It was Mr. Dubois, the owner. He placed 2 steaming bowls of cassoulet in front of them, without a word of inquiry. "It is on the house," he said, his French accent warm and comforting. "Anyone who stands up to a bully eats for free in my establishment." He gave Clara a conspiratorial wink. "And you, Ma Belle, you deserve much better than that fool. Eat. The food here, it can mend the heart, I promise you." As Mr. Dubois walked away, Marcus picked up his spoon. "He's right, you know, about the cassoulet and about you deserving better." Clara took a tentative bite. The flavors were rich and complex: savory sausage, tender duck, and creamy beans in a hearty broth. It was pure comfort. "This is amazing. Wait until you try the creme brulee," Marcus said with a hint of a smile. "Lily insists we get it every time we come, which is every Tuesday. It's our little ritual since—" He paused, that same shadow crossing his features again. "It's just our ritual." They ate in a comfortable quiet for a few minutes as the ambient chatter of the bistro returned to its normal level. Clara found herself stealing glances at Marcus. He had a classic, understated handsomeness with a strong jawline, gentle eyes, and fine lines around them that suggested he smiled more often than he did now. She noticed a faint, pale band on his left ring finger, the ghost of a wedding band. "Can I tell you something?" Clara found herself saying. "This was my 4th first date in 3 years. The first man suggested I'd be a knockout, if I just lost 40 pounds. The second spent the entire dinner showing me pictures of his ex-girlfriend, who was a fitness instructor. The third one ghosted me after I mentioned I had a son. Marcus put down his spoon. Can I tell you something in return? Those weren't dates. Those were interviews with men who see women as status symbols. A real connection, a real partnership, is about finding someone who actually sees you. Not your clothing size, not your job, not what you can do for them, just you. Are you speaking from experience? Clara asked softly. Marcus's hand went unconsciously to the pale mark on his finger. My wife Sarah used to say that love wasn't about finding a perfect person. It was about finding someone whose flaws you could embrace, and who could embrace yours in return. He took a steadying breath. She passed away 2 years ago. An aneurysm. No warning, no time to say goodbye. Clara's hand moved across the table on instinct, her fingers hovering just above his. I'm so incredibly sorry. She would have liked you, Marcus said, seeming to surprise himself with the confession. She was a pediatric oncologist, always fighting for the little ones who couldn't fight for themselves. I'm a pediatric nurse, Clara said, her voice barely a whisper, at CHOP. Marcus looked at her, his expression filled with a new kind of wonder. Really? That's where Sarah worked, 4th floor. I'm on the 6th floor in the NICU, Clara said. I must have passed her in the hallway 100 times. They both sat with the weight of that strange, small world coincidence for a moment. The universe suddenly felt both vast and intimately connected. Tell me about Lily, Clara prompted, wanting to see the light return to his eyes. And he did. Marcus's entire presence shifted when he spoke of his daughter. She's 8 going on 40, he said with a fond smile. Loves to draw fantastical creatures, despises long division, and believes that sparkly shoes are appropriate for all occasions. She's teaching herself to play the ukulele from internet videos so she can surprise me on my birthday. I have to pretend I can't hear her practicing while I'm making dinner. Clara found herself laughing, a genuine, unburdened laugh for the first time all night. She sounds wonderful. She is, he agreed, but it's been tough. She doesn't ask about her mom as much anymore, which somehow feels worse. It's like she's either forgetting or trying to shield me from the pain of talking about her. He pushed a bean around his bowl. I'm doing the best I can. I've learned to do a French braid from a tutorial. I can now differentiate between a leotard and a unitard. But there are things I can't give her, a mother's perspective. You're doing a better job than you realize, Clara said earnestly. The fact that you stood up for a stranger tonight, that tells me everything I need to know about the kind of father you are. Marcus studied her face for a long moment. Can I admit something? I've eaten here every Tuesday for a year, same table, same order. This is the first time I've had a real conversation with anyone besides Mr. Dubois. Why Tuesdays? It was Sarah's favorite day, he explained, a sad smile touching his lips. She'd say Monday was the recovery, Wednesday was the hump, and Friday was too much pressure. But Tuesday was full of quiet potential. His voice grew softer. We had our first date on a Tuesday. We found out we were pregnant with Lily on a Tuesday. She died on a Tuesday. This time Clara did reach for his hand, her fingers gently covering his. And you stood up for a stranger on a Tuesday. Marcus turned his hand over, his fingers briefly lacing with hers, before he gently pulled away. I should probably be clear. I'm not ready for anything. I mean, most days I can barely keep up with Lily's social calendar and my son's laundry, he said, a self-deprecating smile on his face. I'm not exactly prime relationship material. Who said anything about a relationship? Clara replied, though she felt a strange tightening in her chest. Maybe I just need a friend who understands that sometimes being a single parent feels like an impossible weight. Maybe you need someone who won't judge you for declaring that popcorn counts as dinner when you're too exhausted to cook. Leo told our neighbor we had breakfast for dinner 3 times last week, Clara admitted with a wry grin. They talked until the bistro began to empty out. Clara learned that Marcus was an architect who designed libraries and community centers, spaces intended to bring people together. He learned that she had been married briefly to Leo's father, a man who had chipped away at her self-esteem with constant critiques about her postpartum body until she finally gathered the strength to leave him. The worst part wasn't even the comments, Clara confessed, stirring the remnants of her creme brulee. It was that I started to believe him. I started to see myself through his critical eyes instead of my own. Marcus understood that feeling all too well. Some days he looked in the mirror and only saw the man who was missing his other half, Sarah's husband, Lily's co-parent. Mr. Dubois approached their table one last time. We are closing now, but you two, you stay. Love does not follow business hours. Oh, we're not, Clara began, flustered. Just friends, Marcus finished smoothly. Mr. Dubois smiled a knowing smile. Of course. Just friends who look at each other like they've just discovered a hidden spring in the desert. He walked away, humming a classic French love song. They exchanged phone numbers in the parking lot, standing in the space between their cars under the glow of a street lamp. Marcus's was a practical SUV with a faded sticker on the back that read, "My other car is a spaceship." Clara's was a small sedan with a hospital parking permit dangling from the rearview mirror. Thank you, Clara said sincerely, for everything. For standing up to Lance, for the dinner, for making me feel human again. You were always human, Clara, Marcus said with gentle firmness. Anyone who made you feel otherwise was the one who was wrong. As Clara drove home to her small apartment, a feeling she hadn't experienced in years began to blossom in her chest. Hope, not necessarily for a romance, but for the possibility that there were still genuinely good people in the world, people who stepped in instead of looking away. But when she got home and caught her reflection in her bedroom mirror, Lance's cruel words rushed back to her. Too big. Not good for my brand. Not what I envisioned. She stood there in the blue dress that had felt so promising just hours ago, and suddenly all she could see were its flaws, her flaws. She saw the foolishness of hoping that someone as kind and handsome as Marcus could ever truly be interested in someone like her. For the next 3 days, Marcus sent simple, friendly texts. A picture of a bizarre-looking creature Lily had drawn, a joke about coffee being a parent's lifeblood, a simple question about how her day was going. Clara would type out replies, only to delete them before sending. What was she supposed to say? That she'd spent her lunch break weeping in a storage closet at the hospital? That she'd called in sick to work yesterday because the effort of pretending to be okay was too monumental? On the 4th day, Marcus called. Clara stared at the screen, her heart pounding, and let it go to voicemail. Hey, Clara, it's Marcus. I wanted to check in and make sure you're all right. Anyway, I'm probably overthinking this, but I wanted to tell you that Tuesday meant something to me. Not in a high-pressure way, it was really nice to talk to someone who understands. The grief part, the single-parent part, the feeling like you're not quite enough part. Anyway, call me back if you feel up to it. Or don't. But I hope you know someone is thinking of you, okay? I'm going to stop rambling at your voicemail now. Clara listened to that message more than a dozen times. A week passed, then another. Marcus's texts became less frequent, their hopeful tone dimming slightly. Clara ached to respond, but shame was a powerful jailer, and she had locked herself inside its walls. She started avoiding her usual grocery store, terrified of an accidental run-in. She took a different route to the hospital. She wouldn't even drive down the street where Le Petit Bistrot was located, as if proximity to that night might painfully remind her of what hope felt like. 3 weeks after their dinner, Clara's best friend, Jenna, appeared at her door unannounced. "All right, that's it," Jenna declared, marching past Clara into the living room. "You've been ignoring everyone for weeks. You look like you haven't had a decent night's sleep since the last Eagles season, and I know something's wrong. Talk." So Clara told her everything. About Lance's cruelty, about Marcus's kindness, about the wonderful dinner, and about the crushing fear that Marcus's actions were born of pity, not interest. Jenna listened patiently, then gently flicked Clara on the arm. "You are being an absolute fool. A kind, handsome, single dad defends your honor, spends hours talking with you, leaves you the sweetest, most understanding voicemail in human history, and your conclusion is that it's pity?" "You didn't see the way I looked that night," Clara mumbled. "A crying, mascara-smeared mess. And he still chose to sit with you. Clara, honey, pity doesn't text you pictures of monster drawings. Pity doesn't call 3 weeks later. That's called interest. That's called caring." But Clara couldn't silence Lance's voice in her head, couldn't stop seeing herself through his merciless gaze. A month after they met, Marcus sent one last text. "Clara, I don't know what you're going through, but I want you to know something. That night at the bistro, I didn't defend you because I felt sorry for you. I defended you because what he said was fundamentally wrong. You don't owe me a single thing. Not a date, not a reply, not even an explanation. But if you ever decide you want a friend, just a friend who gets it, I'm here. No expectations, no judgment, just friendship." Clara cried for a solid hour. Then, with trembling fingers, she texted back, "Coffee? Just as friends?" Marcus's reply was almost instantaneous. "Absolutely. You name the time and place." They met at a quiet coffee shop 3 days later. Clara had a whole speech prepared about her insecurities and not being ready for anything, but Marcus cut her off gently. "Clara, I meant every word I said. Just friends. No pressure. I know what it feels like to be broken. After Sarah died, I barely left the house for 2 months except to take Lily to school. My sister had to physically drag me to a grief support group. Healing isn't a straight line, and it's rarely a pretty process. I've been either skipping meals or eating everything in my pantry," Clara admitted in a low voice, "and then hating myself for it. It's like Lance's voice is on a loop in my head." Marcus nodded in understanding. "After Sarah passed, I heard her voice everywhere. Except the voice in my head wasn't really her. It was my own guilt telling me I should have done more, should have known something was wrong, should have been with her instead of in the waiting room. The real Sarah would never have said those things to me." They started meeting for coffee every week after that. Just friends. Marcus never once pushed for more. He never made her feel like she had to be anything other than exactly who she was. Some days Clara was bright and talkative. On other days she was quiet and withdrawn. Marcus accepted both versions of her without question. After a month of these coffee dates, Marcus invited her and Leo to their Tuesday dinner at Le Petit Bistrot with Lily. "No pressure," he added quickly. "Lily keeps asking about the pretty lady with the blue dress, and Mr. Dubois is threatening to give our table away if I don't bring you back." Clara was terrified. Meeting his daughter and introducing her own son felt like a monumental step, a line she couldn't uncross. But she found herself saying yes. Lily Thorne was a whirlwind of creative energy. She had her father's dark eyes, but a vibrant spirit that was all her own. "Are you the lady who was sad?" Lily asked within 2 minutes of meeting Clara. "Lily!" Marcus looked mortified. "What? You said she was sad and that the mean man was a poopy head. I said he was not nice, Marcus corrected, his cheeks turning red. Same thing, Lily declared, then turned her attention back to Clara. I like your sweater. It's sparkly. Beside her, 5-year-old Leo, who had been shyly hiding behind Clara's leg, peeked out, intrigued by Lily's confidence. And just like that, Clara fell a little bit in love with Lily Thorne. Dinner became their new normal. Every Tuesday, the four of them would gather at the corner booth. Lily would chatter about her art projects, showing Clara her sketchbook. Leo, usually reserved, opened up under Lily's energetic friendship, and they'd debate whether dragons were cooler than dinosaurs. Lily and Leo never questioned the arrangement. To them, it was simple. Clara and Leo were people who belonged at their table. My first mommy is in heaven, Lily announced one Tuesday out of the blue. Daddy says she's a star now and watches over us to make sure we're okay. Clara glanced at Marcus, who looked momentarily frozen. I'm sure she does, Clara said gently. Do you think she would like you? Lily asked. I don't know, Clara answered honestly. Lily considered this for a moment. I think she would. Daddy smiles a lot more when you and Leo are here. My mommy always wanted Daddy to smile. Marcus excused himself to use the restroom, but Clara saw him wiping at his eyes as he walked away. 3 months into their friendship, Clara had a devastating week. A premature baby she had cared for intensely in the NICU for weeks passed away. The parents' raw, bottomless grief unearthed something in her, a vulnerability she thought she had buried. She canceled their Tuesday dinner, texting that she and Leo were under the weather. An hour later, Marcus was at her apartment door with a container of soup. I'm fine, Clara said, speaking through the closed door. No, you're not, he replied softly. And that's okay. You don't have to let me in, but I'm leaving this soup for Mr. Dubois on your doorstep. He says it cures everything but a broken heart, and even then, it helps. Clara opened the door. She knew she looked awful. Hair unwashed, eyes red and swollen, wearing the same sweatpants for 2 days. I lost a patient, she said, her voice cracking. Marcus set the soup down on her small entryway table and simply pulled her into a hug. It wasn't a romantic embrace or a tentative, careful one. It was the kind of hug that holds a person together when they feel like they are shattering into a million pieces. Clara sobbed into his shoulder, and he just held on, solid and steady. The worst part, Clara said later, as they sat on her couch with the soup between them, is that the mother looked at me like I was supposed to save her baby. Like I failed. You didn't fail, Marcusy said firmly. Sometimes terrible things happen no matter how hard we fight. Trust me, I'm something of an expert on horrible, unpreventable things. They sat in a comforting silence, sharing soup and unspoken grief. Can I tell you something strange? Clara asked. Sometimes I think Lance did me a favor. If he hadn't been so cruel, you never would have come over to my table. We wouldn't be friends. We would have found each other eventually, Marcus said with a surprising certainty. Lily says you and Leo were meant to be in our lives. She's usually right about these things. She correctly predicted our neighbor's cat would have kittens and that her school's principal would get a bad haircut. Clara laughed, the first real laugh she'd had in days. She's something else. She gets that from her mom, he said, then paused, but also from surviving. Kids are resilient in ways we adults forget how to be. 6 months after that first Tuesday at Le Petit Bistro, Clara realized she had fallen in love with Marcus. It wasn't a dramatic lightning strike. It was a quiet, gradual dawning, like finally noticing the sun has risen after a long, dark night. She loved how he danced terribly with Lily in the middle of Mr. Dubois' restaurant, completely unconcerned about who was watching. She loved how he still wore his wedding ring on a chain around his neck, not ready to let go of his past, but brave enough to move forward. She loved that he texted her pictures of funny-looking buildings and remembered that she took her coffee with oat milk and a half spoon of sugar, and that in 6 months he had never once made a comment about what she ate or how she looked. But more than any of that, she loved the person she was becoming with him. Stronger, more confident, someone who could laugh at herself and wear bright colors and order the creme brulee without a second thought. The turning point came on a Tuesday in September. Lily and Leo were both at a sleepover, so it was just Marcus and Clara at dinner. "I have to tell you something," Marcus said, his hands nervously fidgeting with his napkin. "I've started seeing someone." Clara's heart plummeted. She forced a smile. "Oh, that's wonderful. Who is she?" Marcus looked utterly confused. "What? No. I mean, I'm seeing a therapist. About moving forward, about—" He gestured between them. "This. Clara, I'm falling for you. I have been for months. But I needed to be sure it wasn't just about being lonely, or about Lily needing a mother figure, or about me trying to save someone because I couldn't save Sarah. My therapist says those would all be the wrong reasons." Clara could hardly draw a breath. "And what did you conclude?" "I concluded that I'm falling for you because you're you, because you make my daughter laugh, and you understand my son, because you know that grief doesn't just disappear, because you're the first person I want to tell when anything good or bad happens in my day, because you've seen me at my absolute worst, crying over old photos of Sarah and being short-tempered with Lily, and you still show up every Tuesday." He took a deep breath. "Clara, I know you might not feel the same way. I know you're still healing from what that jerk said, from your ex-husband, from all of it. I'm not asking for anything to change. I needed you to know that when I look at you, I don't see any of the things those men made you believe about yourself. I see someone brave and compassionate and beautiful, exactly as you are." Clara reached across the table and took his hand. "I need to tell you something too. I'm terrified. Not of you, but of believing that this could be real. In every relationship I've ever had, I've always been either too much or not enough, too sensitive, too big, too imperfect." "You are not too anything," Marcus said with conviction. "You're just right. For us?" He paused. "You're just right." "I love Lily," Clara said, needing him to understand. "This isn't just about you. I love her, and I adore how she is with my Leo." "She loves you back," he said, his eyes shining. "Yesterday she asked if you could teach her how to do a fishtail braid, because the internet people don't explain it right." Clara laughed through tears she hadn't realized were falling. "I'm ready to stop being just friends if you're still interested." Marcus squeezed her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her skin. "I've been interested since you laughed at Lily's monster drawing, but I wanted you to choose this, to choose us, because you were ready, not because you felt like you owed me anything. I choose you," she said softly, "all of you. Tuesday dinners and terrible dancing and grief that sometimes shows up uninvited, and Lily's sparkly shoes, and Leo's dinosaur facts, and Mr. Dubois' knowing glances." Their first kiss happened right there in their corner booth at Le Petit Bistrot, as Mr. Dubois openly dabbed his eyes with a napkin, and a few of the regular diners applauded softly. It tasted of creme brulee and hope. If you're wondering how two broken people build something whole, it looks a lot like this. It's a slow and careful process, filled with small victories that only they can see, and setbacks that they navigate together. Marcus and Clara dated for a year before he proposed. He did it, of course, at Le Petit Bistrot on a Tuesday. Lily held the ring box in one hand and Leo's hand in the other. "Clara Evans," Marcus said, down on one knee as Lily and Leo bounced with excitement beside him. You turned our Tuesday dinners into the best part of our lives. You've shown Lily that family is not just about blood, but about who you choose to love. You've shown me that love isn't about replacing what was lost, but about making a bigger space in your heart to carry it all. Will you marry us? Say yes, Lily whisper shouted. I already told my teacher you're my almost mom. Clara, laughing and crying all at once, said yes. They were married the following spring in a small ceremony in a city garden. Lily was the flower girl and Leo was the ring bearer, and they insisted on walking down the aisle together. Mr. Dubois catered the reception, declaring it his gift to the couple who had restored his faith in romance. In his vows, Marcus said, Clara, you didn't fix me. I wasn't broken, just grieving. But you sat with me in that grief and made room for it at our table. You loved my daughter before you even knew if you could love me, and that told me everything about the size of your heart. You've taught us that a family can be built from loss and still be the most beautiful thing in the world. Clara's vows included them all. Marcus, Lily, you gave me something I had stopped believing I deserved: unconditional acceptance. You never asked me to be smaller, or quieter, or less myself. You loved me and my sweet Leo on our good days and our bad. Leo, thank you for being the bravest boy I know. Lily, thank you for sharing your dad with us and for teaching me that a little sparkle makes everything better. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. Today, 4 years later, their family includes Lily, now a fierce and witty 12-year-old who defends anyone being bullied, and Leo, a thoughtful 9-year-old who writes incredible stories. They also have twin toddlers, a boy and a girl, who believe their older siblings are actual superheroes. Clara still has days where she looks in the mirror and hears the echoes of cruel words from her past, but then Marcus will wrap his arms around her from behind, kiss her shoulder, and whisper all the things he loves about her body: how it grew their children, how it cares for the tiniest, most fragile patients, how it fits perfectly against his. Lily, old enough now to understand the whole story, once asked Clara, "Do you ever wish that mean man hadn't said those awful things?" Clara thought for a moment. "No, sweetie. Because if he hadn't, your dad might not have stood up. We might never have become friends. You and you and Leo, might never have met. Sometimes the worst things can lead to the best things. But only if you're brave enough to keep your heart open, even when it's scary," Lily added, repeating a phrase she'd heard her parents say. Marcus often thinks about that month when Clara didn't return his calls. He understands now that she needed that space, that she had to make the choice to heal for herself, not for him. He has learned that love isn't just the grand public gesture of defending a stranger. It's the quiet, daily choice to be patient, to listen, to love someone through their own difficult journey of learning to love themselves. Mr. Dubois still gets emotional when they come in for their Tuesday dinners, now a boisterous party of 6. He has a framed photo from their wedding on his wall of fame, right next to a magazine review that calls his bistro the place where real-life love stories begin. As for Lance, a quick social media search shows he's still single and still posting gym selfies. But this story was never really about him. He was just the catalyst, the moment of careless cruelty that sparked an act of profound kindness, which in turn grew into a beautiful, resilient love. Some might say that Marcus saved Clara that night, but the truth is, they saved each other. Clara and Leo brought laughter and light back into a home that had been shadowed by grief. Marcus and Lily gave Clara and Leo a safe harbor to heal and a place to truly belong. And Lily and Leo got a mom and a dad who chose them, who show up for every school play, every soccer game, and every Tuesday dinner, proving that families are made not just by biology, but by choice, commitment, and a love that sees past every surface-level flaw to the soul underneath. If you have ever been made to feel like you are not enough, if you have ever believed that your imperfections disqualify you from being loved, remember Clara's story. Remember that somewhere out there, someone is waiting to love you, not in spite of your scars, but because those scars are part of what makes you real, human, and exactly who they need. Love doesn't always arrive when we feel ready. Sometimes it shows up when we are at our lowest, in stained sweatpants with tear-streaked faces, reeling from the cruelty of the world. Sometimes it looks like friendship first, built on patient texts and shared meals. Sometimes it is the quiet voice of someone who truly sees you and doesn't flinch. The last thing Marcus said to Lance that night was, "She's beautiful. You're just too superficial to see it." He was right. Clara was beautiful, not because of her size or in spite of it, but because of her compassion, her resilience, and her capacity to love even after being hurt. Lance couldn't see it because he was only looking at the exterior. Marcus saw it because he was looking at her heart, and that has made all the difference.